And good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I appreciate you being with me. Have you ordered my book, The Earth or the Elements Shall Melt with Fervent Heat, yet? It's an in-depth, really comprehensive study of 2 Peter chapter 3, demonstrating Peter was not talking about the end of time. He was not talking about the end of the Christian age. He was talking about the end of Old Covenant Israel's age, her covenant age, in the destruction of the Old Covenant temple. Pardon me. All right, here we go. I mentioned yesterday, and I shared with you how Peter in 2 Peter chapter 3, which is parallel, remember, to Matthew 25:31 and following, how Peter is talking about the earth and the elements that are therein shall be burned up. And how that's drawn from Deuteronomy chapter 32, a prophecy of Israel's last days. Now, remember, since Matthew 25:31 and following is directly parallel to 2 Peter chapter 3, and since 2 Peter chapter 3 is drawing directly on Deuteronomy chapter 32, that means that Deuteronomy chapter 32 is the interpretive matrix from which Matthew chapter 25:31 and following is drawn, meaning it's about Israel's last days. Once again, having nothing to do with the end of time or the end of the Christian age. Okay, I promised you yesterday I'd take another look, a little bit deeper look, at this concept of the passing of heaven and earth. And while there are many prophecies of this that we could look at, I want to get into some background terminology. You know, one of the greatest exegetical fallacies made by modern Bible students is to approach the Hebraic scriptures from a Grecian, Hellenized, Alexandrian, literalistic approach. We very, very, very often hear the argument, well, you know, the Bible says what it means, and it means exactly what it says. Well, you know, I agree with that in principle. The problem is this. As moderns, as, may I use the term, Western trained people, we generally do not realize, we don't even give it a thought, we've never been taught this, that we have been trained in an Alexandrian, Grecian worldview, which means basically this. The Grecian worldview was far, far, far more literalistically oriented. In other words, you know, Bible says what it means what it says. But the Hebrews, the ancient Hebrews, now remember, I'm not talking about the Hebrews that have been Hellenized during the period from the 2nd century BC onward. No. I'm not talking about them. Those individuals are the ones that believed in the coming and the restoration of a literal physical kingdom again, and a literal physical resurrection. Even though some tell us, well, you know, the Greeks, they were appalled at the idea of a literal physical resurrection. Well, you know, they were literalistic in their approach to a lot of things. What I am suggesting is that the Jews, the Hellenized Jews, adopted the literalistic perspective when they approached the subject of the kingdom and the resurrection, the coming of the Lord. And as one Bible scholar by the name of Snyder has said, to paraphrase, the very early church very quickly abandoned or lost contact with the Hebraic understanding of apocalyptic language. And as a direct result of that, language of the end, language of the day of the Lord, which was never intended to be taken literally, now began to be literalized and resulted in the expectation of an end of time and a literal coming of the Lord, which was never to be found in the original language. Now that's paraphrase. If anybody wants the full quote, exact quote, I'll be glad to provide it. Just contact me through my website. Do you see what this writer is saying? A well-recognized academic. And he's saying, as a direct result of the Hellenization of the early church, there was a loss of understanding of Hebraic apocalyptic literature. Now, let me illustrate this. All right? What about this language of decreation? Well, in Isaiah chapter 13, the burden of Isaiah, son of Amos, against Babylon. Now, Babylon existed in that time. It wasn't the mightiest nation in the world at that time. But Isaiah was told the day of the Lord against Babylon is near. The day of the Lord. What's Peter talking about? Day of the Lord. Well, is Peter talking about the same identical day of the Lord as Isaiah 13? Nope, absolutely not. Because the day of the Lord was near in the time of Isaiah, and even the Bible Knowledge Commentary, a dispensational commentary says, guess what? Babylon was destroyed by the Assyrians within 15 years of the writing of Isaiah 13. But what would happen at that destruction of Babylon at the hand of the Assyrians? The sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars of heaven will fall from the sky. Wait a minute. That's the language of 2 Peter chapter 3. Yeah, but it's not literal. Once again, the Assyrians destroyed Babylon within 15 years, and then ultimately the Medes and the Persians destroyed the kingdom, as verse 17 and following of Isaiah 13 describes, and she never rose again to be a world empire. That's why Isaiah talks about the day of the Lord against Babylon, she would fall and never rise again. Well, as a kingdom, she never did rise again. But you know what? The literal, physical heaven and earth was not destroyed in Isaiah 13, or when Babylon was destroyed, either by the Assyrians or by the Medes and the Persians. In Isaiah chapter 19, in a prediction of the destruction of Egypt at the hands of the Assyrians under Sargon, Isaiah 19 tells us, behold, Yahweh rides a swift cloud into Egypt. The river Nile shall be completely dried up, and the birds shall not fly in the heavens, and no man will be left. Oh my, boy, sounds like the destruction of all creation, doesn't it? But again, Isaiah chapter 19 predicts that coming of the Lord on the clouds of heaven. But Isaiah chapter 20 tells us that it would be Sargon who is going to accomplish that destruction. Oh, and we know that Sargon destroyed Egypt. Was physical creation destroyed at that time? I think you'd agree it wasn't. Isaiah chapter 34 contains some of the most graphic language to be found in all of the Bible. The constellations of the heavens shall melt. The mountains of earth shall melt with the blood. The sun will not give its light. The moon will not shine. The stars will be destroyed. Oh, wait a minute. It's a prediction of the destruction of Edom and Basra, her capital, in the day of the Lord's wrath, the great day of God's wrath. Now, let me tell you something. The kingdom of Edom was destroyed. I'd love to go into great detail on this, but I don't have time. The kingdom of Edom. By the way, Isaiah chapter 34 doesn't say it was at hand. It just says it's going to happen. The book of Obadiah, predicting that destruction, said the day of the Lord is at hand. It is very near. So from Isaiah 34 until Obadiah, something had changed. Not near, near. And the destruction of Edom is foretold, and is foretold somewhere maybe, maybe around 597 BC, after the Babylonians had already come against Jerusalem and the inhabitants had fled. The Edomites had attacked them, robbed them, pillaged them. And so the Lord is predicting now the destruction of Edom. Well, guess what? Smith's Bible Dictionary, McClintock and Strong, you name it, all tell us Edom, for the first time in her history, was utterly destroyed in 583, 3 years after the fall of Jerusalem in BC 586. Utterly destroyed by the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar. So, let's see. Did the constellations of heaven melt? Nope. Was the earth destroyed when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Edom? Nope. Did the stars fall from the sky? Was the sun darkened? Was the moon turned to blood? Nope. Were all of the streams of Edom and Bozrah turned to pitch and burned day and night forever and forever and forever? Nope. You can actually go to Petra, one of the key cities of Edom at the time, and you know what? There aren't any streams burning with pitch day and night forever. Edom's destruction was permanent, which means it was forever. You get the point? The point is, this is typical Hebraic language to speak of what some scholars call a historical judgment. Now, here's something you need to know. For instance, among many illustrations that could be given, when God was going to use the Assyrians to destroy the 10 northern tribes, Isaiah 10, 5-7, "O Assyria, the rod of my anger, the staff that is in my hand. I'm going to use the Assyrians," the Lord said, "to bring wrath and judgment on the 10 northern tribes of Israel." Oh, but wait, does Assyria think that's true? Does Assyria realize that it is Yahweh that is giving them the power to destroy the 10 northern tribes? Oh, no. He doesn't recognize that. He thinks it's his gods doing it. And all he has in mind is to trample down, to destroy in the name of his gods. But the Lord said, no. He's my instrument. I'm going to use him to accomplish my purpose. And you know what? In that destruction, what happened? Micah chapter 1, 3 and following, "Behold, the Lord comes out of heaven, treads on top of the mountains melt underneath his feet." Let me ask you a question. When the 10 northern tribes were carried off into Assyrian captivity in 721 BC, did the earth melt? Did the mountains literally melt? Did anyone see Yahweh riding out of heaven on a literal cloud? Nope. Failure to read the scriptures in their original Zetzin life situation, in their real life historical, political, social, theological context, leads to people saying today, well, Bible says what it means what it says. Bible says he's going to come out of heaven riding on a cloud with the angels and flaming fire and a trumpet. He didn't do that, therefore the Bible's wrong. The Bible is nothing but a book of broken promises. Which, by the way, reminds me, we now have a email agreement, I would say verbal, and I suppose that's true, a verbal agreement for a formal YouTube internet debate between myself and Mark Smith, who says he was one time a preacher in the churches of Christ. But guess what? He took all of this language of the coming of the Lord, the judgment, the resurrection, the coming on the clouds with the trumpet, etc., etc. He took all that language absolutely, totally, literally, as a good, trained Alexandrian Grecian would. And he says, well, Jesus said he was going to come, that generation. He said he was going to come and destroy the heaven and earth, as 2 Peter chapter 3 says. He didn't do it, therefore he failed. And so Mark wrote a book entitled Broken Promises. Well, he and I are going to have a debate. We'll announce the time later. We don't have the date firmly established. My schedule for the next 3 to 4 weeks is completely, totally wiped out. But I'll be announcing that. It is a debate that you do not want to miss. It will be carried on Derek Lambert's Myth Vision blog. And again, you don't want to miss it. Okay, I am absolutely out of time. I hope you'll take what I've said today about the nature of Hebraic apocalyptic language and compare that with the New Testament usage of that very identical language and realize Matthew chapter 25 is not talking about a literal coming of the Lord at some imaginary end of time or imaginary end of the Christian age. It was a prediction of the fulfillment of God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel that was fulfilled in AD 70. Okay, do not forget, tomorrow we will continue our discussion and examination of the objections to my brand new book. Where's it at? Temple to Telos. I got a whole bunch of books laying out on my desk here. So it's going to be a relatively brief video tomorrow because I'm going to look at some of the objections that have been given to my last video, in which I pointed out it doesn't matter, really, honestly and truly, doesn't matter what you want to say about some of the feast days, okay, and some of the objections that have been lodged against my view in regard to the feast days. In Luke 21, verse 22, Jesus said, predicting the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, these be the days of vengeance in which all things that are written must be fulfilled. Well, any number of people have chimed in and said, well, you're misapplying that text, Don. Well, we'll see if I am on the flip side. I'll see you there.